Open your kitchen cupboard. Cereal, bread, a jar of honey shaped like a bear, a block of cheese in the fridge door. None of it looks strange to you, but almost none of it existed for 99% of human history. So what did we actually eat before all this? The real answer is stranger and darker than most people are ready for. Archaeologists have found the proof buried in caves on 4 continents. To understand it, we have to go back roughly 3 million years. Your earliest ancestors were not predators, they were leftovers specialists. On the African savannah, a lion brought down a zebra and ate first. The organs, the muscle, the fat around the kidneys. Then came the hyenas, crunching through ribs and softer bone. By the time a small, slow, clawless hominin arrived, almost nothing remained. Almost. The thick leg bones were still there, sealed shut, too dense for hyena jaws to crack. Nobody else on the savannah could get inside them. We could. Our ancestors picked up a sharp stone flake, brought it down hard, and split the bone open. Inside was marrow, soft, fatty, and packed with more calories than anything else on the carcass. That single skill, cracking bone with a rock, may be the real beginning of the human diet. Skulls were even better. A single cracked skull holds close to 0.5 kilogram of pure fat. For a body running on scraps, that was the richest meal on the entire plain. This is one reason your brain still lights up at the smell of anything fried. Fat was never extra. It was survival currency. Then there's a theory scientists call the expensive tissue hypothesis. Your gut and your brain are both enormously costly to run. You cannot afford large versions of both at once. As our diet got richer and more concentrated in fat and protein, natural selection let the gut shrink and rerouted that saved energy straight to the brain. Your brain is 2% of your body weight and burns roughly 1/5 of your daily calories. You cannot fuel that on raw roots and leaves. You needed marrow first. Insects came next, and they weren't a last resort. They were reliable. Termite mounds and rotting logs offered fat, protein, and something a stampeding herd never offered. They didn't run away. At sites like Swartkrans in South Africa, worn bone tools show unmistakable wear patterns from digging into termite mounds over 1 million years old. Then came fire, and everything changed again. The earliest confirmed hearths sit inside Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, close to 1 million years old. Cooking is chemistry you do before your stomach has to. Heat breaks down fibres and proteins your gut would otherwise spend hours dismantling. Cooked food yields more usable calories per bite for less metabolic cost. Some researchers argue cooking is the single event that made a bigger brain affordable at all. Once you're cooking bone marrow and roasting roots in ash, you're not just eating, you're upgrading your own hardware. By 300,000 years ago, our ancestors looked essentially like you. The menu had exploded. Wild horse and bison on open ground, shellfish pried from tidal rocks, middens of empty shells piles up along the coast of South Africa dating back over 160,000 years, wild grains and tubers, bird eggs stolen straight from nests, and honey. Dangerous, high effort, and irresistible. The Hads of Tanzania still live close to this pattern today. Wild honey can make up around 15% of their calories in some seasons. They'll climb without ropes, tolerate dozens of stings, and go back the next week because nothing else in the bush delivers that much energy in one sitting. That exact craving is still wired into you. Your brain cannot tell the difference between a wild honeycomb and a candy bar. Both trigger the same ancient signal. Store this now, you may not eat again for days. Modern food companies didn't invent your sweet tooth. They found it and built an entire industry around triggering it on command. Meat did something similar for your patience with effort. Anthropologists point to persistence hunting. Early humans, low on speed but rich in sweat glands, could run a fast animal like a kudu into heat exhaustion over hours, on foot, under the sun, when no other predator could. One large kill fed a group for days and freed up hours that would otherwise go to foraging, hours that could go into raising children, making better tools, or just sitting around a fire. That's likely why protein-heavy meals still feel disproportionately satisfying to you today, but not every craving from your past is one you'd want to admit to out loud. At Moulaguercy Cave in France, researchers examined roughly 100,000-year-old Neanderthal remains and found cut marks identical to the ones left on deer bones from the same layer. Scraped clean by stone tools, long bones snapped open, the same way marrow bones were snapped open. At El Cedron in Spain, a group of at least 12 Neanderthals showed the same pattern. Skulls opened, bones fractured for marrow, using the exact butchery technique used on animal prey, and it wasn't isolated. Similar evidence has turned up at Krapina in Croatia, Fontbréguard in France, and Gough's Cave in England, where clean skull fragments were shaped, rim by rim, into something close to a drinking cup. Here's what makes it stranger than simple starvation. A 2017 calorie study estimated an adult human body provides around 125,000 calories of usable tissue. A single red deer offers roughly 10 times that. A mammoth, when they were still around, offered millions. Humans were, calorically, a terrible use of effort, especially at sites where deer and horse bones from the very same meals show these communities had other food available. At Gough's Cave, one carved bone bears a deliberate zigzag pattern etched in after the flesh was gone. Decoration, not desperation. Something ritual was happening here, repeated across a continent, for tens of thousands of years, in populations that had no contact with one another. And your ancestors didn't only eat fresh kills, they ate old ones. Hunters couldn't finish a large carcass in a day, so they cached it, buried in cool soil, sunk in a stream, tucked into a rock crevice, and came back to it days or weeks later, by which point it was fermenting, not fresh. Some researchers think this wasn't just tolerated, it was preferred. Partially decomposed meat is already broken down by bacteria, easier to digest, and the microbial activity even generates B vitamins the raw meat lacked. There's also evidence of geophagy, deliberately eating small amounts of clay-rich soil, a practice still documented in traditional communities today, which may have helped bind toxins and settle the stomach after eating questionable meat. You are still eating controlled rot every week without thinking about it. Cheese is milk fermented on purpose. Yogurt, sourdough, wine, beer, soy sauce, kimchi, pickles, every one of them is decomposition, deliberately guided and stopped at exactly the right moment. Your fondness for a sharp-aged cheddar didn't start in a dairy in Somerset. It started with meat left in a stream 100,000 years ago, and a body that learned rot wasn't always the enemy. Every craving sitting in you right now, for fat, for salt, for sugar, for the richest thing on the table, is a program written over 3 million years, running on hardware that has no idea it's sitting in a kitchen instead of a savannah. It doesn't know about refrigerators. It only knows one rule. When you find something rich, eat it now, because tomorrow it might be gone. Drop a modern person into that world 50,000 years ago, and they'd likely be dead within a week. Unable to find safe water, unable to tell an edible root from a poisonous one, too slow to run down anything, and not strong enough to crack open what's left when something else already has. But drop someone from that world into your kitchen and they'd think they'd broken into a god's storeroom. A drink that's cold and sweet without ever touching hive. Bread nobody in the room baked. Milk that stayed fresh for 2 weeks, sealed in a box. Fruit grown on the other side of the planet, sitting there, waiting, with nobody guarding it and nothing hunting you for it. For nearly the entire history of our species, being hungry was the default condition of being alive. You might be among the first humans who genuinely aren't. Most of us walk past that fact every single day without noticing it at all.